peculiarities. That was asking far too much. He knew the odds, and they weren't in his favor. Shadow riders were obligated to have children, so if they weren't married to a suitable woman by a certain age, one he was approaching, an arranged marriage would follow. For a man like Vittorio, that would be an utter disaster. For a moment he stood in the shadows, watching the women dancing, knowing not a single one of them would ever tolerate him as a life partner. He had to find a woman who would have the genetics to produce children capable of riding the shadows and carrying on their work. That was his obligation. He could never simply fall in love. He had to fall in love with the right person. The odds of finding that were so slim, most riders never believed it could happen. For Vittorio, the odds were even slimmer. He didn't want a traditional partnership. He didn't have that kind of personality. He needed his woman to trust him implicitly and allow him to care for every aspect of her life. Where, in the modern world, could a woman like that be found? That would be impossible as well. Two impossibilities meant it wasn't going to happen for him. He would be in a loveless, arranged marriage for the rest of his life. He sighed and turned his attention back to that whisper of impending danger that had drawn him to the club. The floor plan had 3 tiers. The top tier was extremely expensive, but provided the most privacy. Most of the celebrities stayed there to party. Bodyguards were prevalent, and the club's highly trained security were visible as well. The 3rd tier wasn't a place Vittorio would expect to have any real trouble, but his every instinct pointed him in that direction. He waited for the music to change and the light show to begin. The dancing colors cast all kinds of shadows throughout the large club, giving him plenty of choices. He selected a shadow that cut through the bar on the 2nd-tier landing and zigzagged his way up to the highest tier, where the Ferraros kept a table reserved just for family. He stepped into a thin, dark streak, and instantly his body was sucked into the tube, pulled apart and flung through tables and chairs and up 2 winding staircases to the top tier. Standing in the mouth of the tube, he needed a few seconds for his body to feel as if it had come back together. There was always the sick feeling that came with fast travel, with being pulled apart and put back together. The moment Vittorio was up on the top floor, the sense of conspiracy, of danger, became overwhelming. He closed himself off from the noise and concentrated on that feeling of trouble, of a fated doom. At the 3rd table from the Ferraros' exclusive seating sat 3 men. He recognized 2 as enforcers for the Saldi family. Just seeing them in his club caused the knots in his gut to tighten. No one could keep drugs out of a club, but they didn't allow sales there. The Saldis, a notorious crime family, brought drugs in and sold them from streets and alleys to the private parties of the rich. Every kind of drug anyone could possibly want, they provided, but not in a Ferraro club. It was one of the few things the Saldis knew the Ferraros would go to war with them over. The Saldis were recognized as a branch of the largest crime family in the States. Giuseppe Saldi was the acknowledged leader and was certainly the biggest crime boss in Chicago. These particular men worked for his brother, Michele Saldi. The big question was, why were 2 of Saldi's goons sitting in the Ferraro nightclub making a deal with some low-life junkie? Clearly they were conducting business of sorts. The Saldi enforcers blended in, with their expensive suits and Rolex watches, but the man sitting across from them was, by comparison, in disheveled clothes that had seen better days. Vittorio was going to have to review the security tapes. There were certain protocols in place. Every doorman, every bouncer, and every security guard was required to be familiar with the Saldis and their employees. If they entered the nightclub, the Ferraro family was to be informed immediately. That hadn't happened. The fact that the 2 Saldi enforcers sat in the VIP section on the 3rd tier and no one had called a family member to let them know added an additional sin against the club's security measures. Or the Saldis had paid off someone high enough up in the nightclub's management that they were able to sneak through. If that were the case, who else had they allowed in? Vittorio needed to move around and listen to the conversation.